A recent court case in North Carolina helped expose problems with the state's Certificate of Need law. Joining us to discuss those problems is John Sanders. He is Senior Fellow in Regulatory Studies and Research Editor at the John Locke Foundation. And John, at the surface level, this court case wasn't particularly interesting in the sense that the Court of Appeals unanimously upheld an administrative law judge's ruling, which unanimously confirmed what the State Department of Health and Human Services said. But digging into the details of this case, it really showed a lot of problems with the Certificate of Need process, didn't it?
I thought so. Yeah, what you saw was, like you said, the ALJ, the administrative law judge, said, what the agency did was right in line with what the agency is allowed to do within state law, which is the Certificate of Need law. And the appellate court's decision really got into some juicy bits about what happened in the background, and it's atrocious. And the Judge Tyson recognized it as anti-competitive behavior, but it was anti-competitive behavior within a system that is, as my friend and former colleague Roy Cordato described it, Soviet-esque.
We're going to get into some details that you spelled out in a recent John Locke Foundation research brief on this, and we won't address all of them, but you set out 9 different questions to be answered about this case, all of which are very informative. But let's start back with the general premise. In 2018, the state government decided that North Carolina needed one mobile PET scanner in addition to any of those already operating in the state. You looked at this and said, wait a minute, this raises questions in and of itself.
Right. Yeah. How is it that a state government agency gets to determine a market need? That's at the crux of the problem of Certificate of Need law, which is why it was described as Soviet-esque. I mean, the government of North Carolina, the state agency, DHHS, is deciding that statewide we just need one more. And this was in 2018, and now it's 2021, and we still don't have it because they're still fighting it in court.
And because of the state determination that there was a need for one more, a bunch of different groups competed to get the one permission slip from government rather than having anyone who wanted to and had the resources to get a PET scanner get one. Instead, it was all a competition to get the government's permission slip.
Well, and that's the problem with it, is when you have government get so entangled in the market, then competing businesses no longer try to get and win over consumers. They try to win over politicians, and they try to do it in any way possible. And that's what we saw here.
I'm going to address now some of your specific questions from your research brief on this topic. One is, what's the difference between this kind of need, the need for a new PET scanner, and consumer demand?
Well, as I said there's no real telling, there's no way of quantifying how many consumers would demand, but I guarantee it'd be more than one. We had 4 providers willing and able to step right in, and those are the ones that I think that there would have been more than 4 if this was a regular market environment. When I say that, how many new fast food restaurants do we need? How many new auto parts stores do we need? No one knows, but businessmen taking a view of the situation and knowing their own risks and cost assessments will come in and take a chance.
You also ask, who would be harmed by 4 new mobile PET scanners instead of 1? If all 4 of the groups that had applied for the Certificate of Need had just gone out and bought PET scanners, we would have 4. They would have been operating for the past 3 years instead of this long bureaucratic and legal fight that has yet to produce a single new PET scanner.
Right. You would think, who would be harmed? It certainly sounds like it would really be good for people. But the people that would be harmed would be the current providers, who would suddenly face more competition.
In fact, that is the answer to another one of your questions, which was who benefits from no new mobile PET scanners, and that is the ones who already have them.
Yeah, so the need is determined by the state, has yet to have been met.
Now, this also leads into one of the juiciest bits of this court decision, and that was the process through which the competition played out. There was one agency or one group called Mobile Imaging Partners that has ties to UNC Healthcare that, according to the court record, basically has a monopoly on mobile PET scanning services across the state and went above and beyond what anyone would expect to try to keep that monopoly. And that was really spelled out in this court case.
Right. So Mobile is the one that lost the certificate of need decision. And so they were the ones that were appealing. The one that got it was Insight. Insight, originally, from what I read, basically would have had 6 locations lined up. They went to court with 2 locations. 2 locations was the minimum. Mobile went to the agency with 6 locations. Insight said that they would have had 6, but 3 of them pulled out and wouldn't agree to it because they were worried about ticking off Mobile, and they were worried they were going to lose Mobile's other business. And then, so they were left with 2, and then Mobile was able to get one of the 2 hospitals to sign a letter supporting Mobile and basically rescinding their permission to Insight. So a lot of pressure behind the scenes, a lot of bad actions, and as I said, the agency, the ALJ, and the appellate court all recognize this is anti-competitive behavior and did not credit Mobile with doing so.
Is this an issue 100% tied to the fact that this is all part of the con process, and that if there were no government permission slip, we wouldn't see any of this?
Yes, I look at this and I don't think, gosh, Mobile was a bad actor in this case. I think that this is more reflective of the fact that the state of North Carolina has no business being involved in making medical decisions like this. And a lot of states no longer have certificate of need. The government, the federal government, is a reason why North Carolina got involved and all the other states. And it was such a disaster that even the federal government pulled back, and this is back in 1987, and said, you know what, this is a bad idea, we're getting out.
If you'd like to learn much more, including answers to more questions that are probably popping up in your head as you hear the details, you can go to the John Locke Foundation's website, find the research brief with this title, Need? Health Consumers Don't Need So Much Time Wasted, Money Spent on Con Shenanigans. Its author is John Sanders. He is the Senior Fellow in Regulatory Studies and Research Editor at the John Locke Foundation. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks, Mitch.